I never thought I'd be the kind of man to sit in the dark, staring at a flickering screen, my heart pounding like a drum in a thunderstorm. It was late. Too late, really, when I decided to check the security camera footage from the living room. We'd installed it after a break-in scare last year, a little white box perched above the bookshelf, silent and unassuming. I'd always trusted her, you see. My wife, Clara. Her laugh like wind chimes, her eyes a soft hazel that could melt ice. She was my anchor. Or so I thought. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something gnawed at me, a restless itch I couldn't scratch. Maybe it was the way she'd been distant lately. Her smiles thinner, her excuses sharper. Work's crazy, she'd say, brushing me off. You're imagining things, David. I wasn't imagining the late nights, though. The way she'd slip in after midnight. Her perfume faintly different, her voice too bright, too forced. So there I was, alone in our cramped home office, the glow of my laptop the only light in the house, clicking through the footage from earlier that day. It started innocently enough. Claire on the couch, sipping tea, normal, mundane. I almost closed the laptop, feeling foolish. But then the doorbell rang on the recording, a sharp chime that made me pause. She got up, smoothed her dress. Why was she so nervous? And opened the door. 3 men walked in. 3. Not one, not a friend I'd recognize, but 3 strangers, each with a casual swagger that turned my stomach to lead. I leaned closer, my breath catching. Who were they? Why were they here? The timestamp read 2:17 p.m. I'd been at the office, hunched over spreadsheets, oblivious. I watched, frozen, as they laughed with her, their voices muffled but their ease unmistakable. My Clara, tossing her head back, her hand brushing one of their arms. My chest tightened, my hands shook. This wasn't a meeting. This wasn't work. This was something else, something that clawed at my insides and left me gasping in the dark. The screen glowed brighter, or maybe it just felt that way, as I watched those 3 men settle into my living room like they owned it. One sprawled on the couch, my couch, his boots scuffing the armrest. Another leaned against the wall, smirking, while the third paced, restless, his eyes darting to Clara. She moved between them, graceful, confident, too confident. My throat burned, my palms were slick with sweat. I wanted to look away, to smash the laptop, to pretend this wasn't happening, but I couldn't. I had to know. I turned up the volume, straining to catch their words. You sure he's gone all day? The pacing one asked, his voice low, cautious. Clara laughed, a sound I used to love, and nodded. David's clueless, she said. Clueless. The word hit me like a fist. My name in her mouth, twisted with disdain, echoed in my skull. I gripped the desk, my knuckles white, my breath shallow. She didn't just betray me. She mocked me. Then it got worse. The footage jumped. Time skips, I realized, from motion detection, and suddenly they were closer, too close. No details. Thank God. Just shadows and gestures, but enough to make my vision blur with rage. 3 of them. 3. My wife, my home, my life, invaded, defiled. I slammed the pause button, the image frozen. Clara's head tilted, one of them whispering something, all of them laughing. My heart wasn't pounding anymore. It was a cold, heavy stone sinking in my chest. I sat there, staring, the silence of the house pressing in. Then I heard it. The front door creaking open downstairs. Clara was home. Now, my pulse surged again, not with fear, but with something darker. Something cruel. She didn't know I'd seen. She didn't know I was awake. And in that moment, I decided, she wouldn't know what was coming, either. Her footsteps echoed up the stairs, soft, careless, like she hadn't a worry in the world. I snapped the laptop shut, the screen's glow vanishing, leaving me in blackness. My hands trembled, but my mind? My mind was ice, clear, sharp, deadly. Clara didn't deserve tears or screams. No, she'd get something else, something I'd craft with the same precision she'd used to lie to me. I stood, smoothing my shirt, forcing my face into a mask of calm. She couldn't suspect. Not yet. David. Her voice floated through the house, sweet as ever, a blade wrapped in velvet. I stepped into the hall, the dim light catching her silhouette as she climbed the stairs. She looked up, startled, then smiled. Oh, that smile. It used to warm me. Now it was a taunt. You're up late, she said, brushing her hair back, her coat still on. Did she smell like them? I didn't want to know. Couldn't sleep. I replied, my voice steady. Too steady, maybe. She didn't notice. She never did. Bad day at work? She asked, slipping past me toward the bedroom. I followed, my eyes on her back, imagining those 3 shadows trailing her. Something like that, I said, and she laughed, a light, careless sound that made my jaw clench. She thought I was the same old David, dull, predictable, clueless. Good. Let her think that. In the bedroom, she kicked off her shoes, chattering about her day, lies, all lies, while I stood by the dresser, nodding, smiling. Inside, I was carving a plan, cold and deliberate. Revenge wouldn't be loud or messy. It'd be quiet, calculated, something that'd hit her where it hurt most. And those 3? They'd pay too. I didn't know their names yet, but I'd find them. The camera had their faces. I had time. And now, I had purpose. Clara's voice faded into a hum as she slipped into the bathroom, the door clicking shut behind her. Water ran, her nightly ritual, washing away the day, or so she thought. I stood there, rooted to the carpet, staring at the closed door. My chest ached, not with sadness, not anymore, but with a slow, grinding fury that felt alive, like it had claws. She betrayed me. Yes, but worse, she'd made a fool of me. 3 men. 3 strangers laughing in my house, lounging on my furniture, while I sat in some gray office cubicle, trusting her. The image burned behind my eyes, her head tilted, their smug grins, the ease of it all. I clenched my fists, my nails biting into my palms. No more trusting. No more David the clueless. I turned away, my footsteps silent as I crept back to the office. The laptop sat there, a Pandora's box I'd barely cracked open. I flipped it on, the screen flaring to life, that frozen frame glaring back at me, Clara and her trio, mid-laugh. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to watch again, frame by frame. I needed details, clues, weaknesses, anything I could use. The pacing one had a scar above his left eyebrow, faint but jagged. The smirker wore a leather jacket, scuffed at the elbows, with a pin I couldn't quite make out. The couch sprawler had a tattoo peeking from his sleeve, some kind of bird, maybe a raven. Small things, but enough to start with. I'd find them. I'd make them regret stepping foot in my life. But Clara, she was the architect of this. My wife of 8 years, the woman I'd build a home with, dreamed with she'd orchestrated it all. Why? I rewound the footage, her words echoing. David's clueless. The casual cruelty of it stung deeper than the act itself. She didn't just cheat, she despised me. My hands hovered over the keyboard, trembling, not with fear, but with the weight of what I was becoming. Revenge wasn't a shout or a fist. It was a sculpture, something you chiseled with care until it was perfect. And I'd make it perfect. I grabbed a notebook from the drawer, the one I used for grocery lists and tax notes, mundane relics of a life that didn't exist anymore. Pen in hand, I started writing. Step 1. Identify them. The camera footage wasn't enough. Faces, sure, but no names, no lives. I'd need more. Step 2. Dismantle Clara's world. Not her body. No, I wasn't that kind of man. But her pride, her security, the things she clung to. Step 3. The 3 Stooges. They'd get theirs, tailored to each smirk, each swagger. I scribbled faster, ideas spilling out, financial ruin, public shame, isolation. My handwriting grew jagged, the pen digging into the paper. It felt good. Too good. Then I heard it, a soft thud from downstairs. My head snapped up. My pulse spiked. Clara was still in the bathroom, the shower was running, a faint hiss through the walls. I set the pen down, ears straining. Another sound, a creak, like a floorboard settling or bending under weight. My breath caught. Was someone here? No? I stood, glancing at the laptop, the timestamp on the paused video glowed. 2:17 p.m., hours ago. This was real time, happening in the dark of my own house. I grabbed a letter opener from the desk, not much, but sharp, and slipped into the hall. The shower still hummed. Clara was oblivious. Good. I moved down the stairs, each step deliberate, my grip tight on the makeshift weapon. The living room stretched out before me, shadows pooling in the corners. The security camera blinked its tiny red light above the bookshelf, still watching, still recording. I scanned the room. Nothing. No movement, no intruders. My shoulders eased, but only slightly. Then I saw it, the front door, ajar, a sliver of night air seeping in. I hadn't left it open. Clara hadn't come through it. She'd used the garage. My heart thudded, cold sweat prickling my neck. I crossed the room, peering out into the street. Empty, just the streetlights flickering, the wind rustling the trees. But there, on the doorstep, was something new, a small envelope, plain white, no address. I knelt, hesitating, then picked it up. My name, David, was scrawled across it in black ink, the handwriting shaky, unfamiliar. I tore it open, my fingers clumsy, and pulled out a single sheet of paper. One sentence stared back at me. She's not what you think. Check the basement. The words hit me like a slap. The basement? We barely used it. Just boxes, old furniture, junk from a life I thought I knew. And who wrote this? My mind raced. Someone knew something, saw something. One of the three? A neighbor? A stranger playing games? I glanced back at the stairs. The shower had stopped. Clara would be out soon, expecting me in bed, expecting the same old David. I folded the note, tucking it into my pocket, my resolve hardening. The revenge I'd planned was still there, simmering. But this was a curve I hadn't seen coming. I locked the door, my movements mechanical, and headed for the basement stairs. The letter opener stayed in my hand. Instinct, maybe, or paranoia. The door creaked as I pushed it open, the darkness below swallowing the light from above. A stale smell hit me, dust, mildew, neglect. I flicked the switch, the bulb buzzed, casting a weak yellow glow. Step by step, I descended, the chill seeping into my bones. Boxes loomed like silent sentinels, their shadows jagged on the concrete walls. I didn't know what I was looking for: proof, a lie, a trap, but that note had sunk its hooks into me. Then I saw it, a box in the corner, half open, papers spilling out. Not ours, not the tax files or holiday cards I'd packed years ago. These were different: letters, photos, a handwriting I didn't recognize. My knees hit the floor as I dug in, my breath ragged. A photo slid out. Clara, younger, smiling, with a man I'd never seen, not one of the three from the video. My head spun. Who was he? What was this? The note's words echoed, "She's not what you think," and suddenly, my revenge, my cold, perfect plan, felt small. Too small. There was more here, buried deeper than I'd ever imagined. The basement air clung to me, damp, heavy, like it was holding secrets I wasn't meant to find. I knelt there, the concrete biting into my knees, the photo trembling in my hands. Clara's face stared up at me, younger, softer, her smile unguarded in a way I hadn't seen in years. The man beside her was a stranger, tall, dark-haired, his arms slung around her shoulders with a possessive ease. Not one of the three from the video, no scar, no leather jacket, no raven tattoo. Someone else. Someone before. My stomach churned, my throat tightened. Who was he? And why was this buried down here, hidden in a box I'd never touched? I set the photo aside, my fingers digging deeper into the pile. Letters, dozens of them, tumbled out, yellowed envelopes with postmarks from towns I didn't recognize: Millwood, Cresthaven, places we'd never been. The handwriting matched the note on my doorstep, shaky, urgent, slanting across the page. I tore one open, my pulse thudding in my ears. "Clara, you can't keep running," it read. "He'll find you. We both know what he's capable of." No signature, just a scrawled initial, R. My breath hitched. Running? From who? From me? No, that didn't fit. I'd never given her reason to run. Or had I missed something all these years? Another letter, dated 6 years ago, before our marriage went cold. I saw him again. He asked about you. I lied, but he knows something's off. My head spun. Someone was hunting her or haunting her. I grabbed the photo again, studying the man's face. Sharp jaw, piercing eyes, nothing familiar, but something about him felt dangerous. A predator's gaze. Was he the he in the letters? Was he tied to the three upstairs in my living room today? My mind raced, stitching threads I couldn't see. Clara wasn't just cheating, she was hiding. From me, from them, from him. Footsteps overhead snapped me back. Clara, moving through the house. The shower was off. She'd be looking for me soon. I shoved the letters and photo back into the box, my hands shaking not with fear, but with a fury I could taste, bitter and sharp. She'd built a life of lies, and I'd been the fool holding it up. But now? Now I had pieces, fragments of her past, her secrets, and I'd used them. My revenge wasn't just about the three anymore. It was about her, all of her, every shadow she'd dragged into our home. I climbed the stairs, the letter opener still in my pocket, its weight a cold comfort. The living room was quiet, the camera's red light blinking like an unblinking eye. Clara's voice drifted from the kitchen. "David? You down there?" Sweet, casual, too casual. I forced a smile, stepping into the light. "Yeah, just checking something," I said, My tone even practiced. She stood by the sink, a glass of water in her hand, her hair damp from the shower. She looked at me, really looked, and for a split second, I saw it, a flicker of unease in her hazel eyes. Did she know I'd been downstairs? Did she sense the shift in me? You okay? She asked, tilting her head. That tilt, God, I'd seen it on the footage, aimed at them. My smile tightened. Fine, I lied. Just tired. She nodded, sipping her water, oblivious to the storm brewing in my chest. I watched her, memorizing every move, the way she brushed her hair back, the way her lips curved. I'd need that later, when I tore it all apart. Back in the office, I locked the door, something I'd never done before. The laptop hummed to life, the footage still paused on that mocking scene. But now, I had a new lens. The basement hall burned in my mind. Clara's past wasn't just a betrayal, it was a map. I opened a browser, my fingers flying across the keys. Millwood, Cresthaven, small towns, hours away. I searched for news, anything tied to her name. Clara Ellis, her maiden name, the one she'd clung to on legal forms. Nothing at first, just dead ends. Then, buried in a Cresthaven archive from 9 years back, local woman disappears after fire. Arson suspected. No photo, but the name Clara Ellis stopped me cold. My breath caught. The article was thin. A house burned, a woman vanished, a man questioned but released. No arrests, no leads. I cross-checked the dates 9 years ago, just before we met. She'd shown up in my life months later, all smiles and mystery, claiming a fresh start. I'd never pushed her on it. Why would I? I'd been smitten, blind. Now, the pieces clicked, jagged and ugly. The fire, the letters, the man in the photo, she'd fled something. Someone. And today, with those three, she wasn't just cheating, she was gambling with whatever she'd left behind. I leaned back, the chair creaking under me. My plan shifted, grew teeth. Step 1. The three. I'd still find them, scar, jacket, tattoo, but now it wasn't just spite. They were keys, maybe, to her past. Step 2. Clara's world. Not just her pride, her lies, her safety. I'd unravel her, thread by thread, until she had nowhere to hide. Step 3. The ghost. The man in the photo, the he in the letters. If he was still out there, I'd draw him in, use her as bait if I had to. Cruel? Yes. Cold? Absolutely. But she'd carved this path, not me. A knock jolted me. Clara, outside the door. David, you coming to bed? Her voice was softer now, almost tender. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. In a minute, I called back, my tone a perfect mask. The lock held. She didn't push. Good. I turned to the laptop, pulling the footage up again. I'd save it. Every frame, burn it to a drive, keep it safe. Evidence, leverage, a weapon. Then I remembered the note. She's not what you think. My hand brushed the envelope in my pocket. Whoever wrote it knew her, knew enough to warn me. An ally? An enemy? I'd find them too. The basement box sat downstairs, a Pandora's chest of her past. Tomorrow, I'd dig deeper, photos, letters, anything else she'd buried. For now, I stood, my reflection ghostly in the dark window. The man staring back wasn't David the clueless anymore. He was something else, something she'd never see coming. Morning broke gray and heavy, the kind of day that presses down on you. Clara was already up, humming in the kitchen, her mask intact, her lies simmering beneath the tune. I sat in the office, the locked door a silent barrier, the basement box now hauled upstairs in the night's quiet hours. It sprawled across the desk. Letters, photos, a life I didn't know. My fingers traced the edges of another note. He's closer than you think, Clara. Leave now. Dated 5 years ago, when we were still happy, or so I'd thought. My jaw clenched. She'd been running even then, weaving me into her web without a word. I cross-referenced the footage again, zooming on the three intruders. Scar, jacket, tattoo, their faces sharper now in my mind. I searched online, trawling through social media, local news, anything. Hours bled by, then a hit, a blurry photo from a Millwood bar's Facebook page, 2 years old. Scar and tattoo, arms slung around each other, grinning. No names, but a tag, Raven's Crew. My pulse quickened. Are like the letters? A coincidence, maybe, but I didn't believe in those anymore. I saved the image, my plan crystallizing. They weren't random, they were tied to her past. Clara knocked again, sharper this time. David, you've been in there all morning. Everything okay? Her voice was honey-laced with suspicion. I unlocked the door, meeting her gaze, calm, cold, calculated. Work stuff, I said, brushing past her. She frowned but didn't push. Good. I needed space to breathe, to plot. Downstairs, I pocketed the note from the doorstep and headed out, destination, the basement again. Something nagged at me, a hunch I couldn't shake. The box wasn't everything, she'd hidden more. The concrete walls loomed as I descended, the bulb flickering. I scanned the shadows, then saw it, a loose panel near the furnace, barely noticeable. I pried it open, my heart thudding. Inside, a metal lockbox, rusted, heavy. No key, but the letter opener did the trick, snapping the latch with a groan. Papers, cash, a burner phone, my breath caught. And a photo, the man from before, older now, with Clara again, her face tight with fear. On the back, in her handwriting, if he finds me, it's over. My blood ran cold. She wasn't just hiding, she was terrified. The burner phone buzzed to life when I powered it on, 3 missed calls, all from the same number, no name. My thumb hovered, then pressed call. It rang twice before a voice answered, gruff, impatient. Clara? Where the hell are you? I froze, my grip tightening. Not Clara, me. She's not here, I said, low, steady. Silence, then a sharp intake of breath. Who's this? He demanded. I smirked, cold as ice. Her husband. Who's this? A pause too long, then the line went dead. My mind raced. The man from the photo? The he she feared? I redialed, no answer. Fine. I'd find him another way. Back upstairs, Clara was gone, left a note about groceries. Perfect. I dove into the lockbox again. Cash, $5,000, stacked neatly. Papers, fake IDs, hers, different names. Clara Ellis was just one mask. My chest tightened. She'd planned to vanish again, leave me in the dust. The footage looped in my head. Those 3 weren't lovers. They were scouts, maybe, or enforcers. Sent by him? I hacked the burner's call log, crude, but I managed. The number traced to Cresthaven. My revenge sharpened. I'd lure them all, her, the 3, this ghost, into a trap of my making. I drove to a hardware store, bought rope, duct tape, a burner of my own, items that didn't raise brows alone but sang together. My plan wasn't murder, I wasn't that man, but suffering? Yes. Exposure, ruin, fear, I'd give them that. Back home, I hid the haul in the garage, then checked X. Raven's crew popped up again, cryptic posts about old debts. Clara returned, oblivious, chatting about apples and bread. I nodded, my mask firm, my heart a furnace of ice. Night fell, and I waited. Clara slept, her breathing even, while I sat in the office, the burner phone from the lockbox in hand. I texted the number. Meet me. She's here. 11 p.m., Old Mill on Route 9. A gamble. He'd bite, or he wouldn't. I synced the security camera to my phone, watching her sleep, then slipped out. The mill, abandoned, remote, was perfect. I rigged it. Tripwires, floodlights, a chair bolted to the floor. Cruel? Yes. Necessary? More so. At 10:45, headlights pierced the dark. A man stepped out, not from the footage, but the photo, older, harder. Him. Where is she? He growled, scanning the shadows. I stepped forward, my voice ice. You'll see her soon enough. He lunged, predictable, and tripped the wire. Lights flared, he stumbled, cursing. I bound him fast, rope biting his wrists. Who are you? I demanded. His eyes narrowed, fear, then defiance. Her past, he spat. You're the fool she married. Clara's voice cut through, David. Behind me. I spun. She stood there, pale, trembling, a gun in her hand. My trap had snared more than I'd planned. You don't understand, she whispered, tears streaking her face. He'll kill us both. My heart stuttered, but my resolve held. Explain, I said, cold, unyielding. The man laughed, a bitter, broken sound. Tell him, Clara. Tell him what you did. Clara's gun shook, her eyes darting between us. Put it down, I said, stepping closer, my voice steel. She hesitated, then dropped it, sobbing. I didn't mean for this, she choked out. Richard, he owned me. Debts, promises, I ran, but he found me. Those 3, they were his. Richard sneered from the chair. She burned my life down, literally. Owes me everything. I stared at her, the woman I'd loved, now a stranger. And me? I asked, quiet, deadly. Collateral, she whispered. My plan shifted, crueler, sharper. I unbound Richard, handed him the burner. Call them the 3. Bring them here. He smirked, complying. They'd come, thinking it was his win. Clara begged, David, please. I silenced her with a look. You chose this. Headlights soon glared, scar, jacket, tattoo piled out, confused. I flipped the floodlights. They froze, blinded. You're done, I said, tossing Clara's fake IDs at their feet. She's yours. Deal with her past. Richard lunged for her. I stepped back, watching. Chaos erupted, shouts, fists, but I was already gone, the camera footage uploaded to my cloud. Evidence, leverage, my escape. I drove home, numb, the house silent. My revenge wasn't blood. It was abandonment, exposure, letting her ghosts devour her. Dawn crept in, gray and still. I sat in the living room, the camera blinking above me. Clara didn't return, neither did they. X buzzed with whispers, Raven's crew imploding, a woman's IDs leaked online. My doing. I'd sent the footage to, anonymous, untraceable, her betrayal bared to the world. Cruel? Yes. Cold? Like ice. I packed a bag, left the house, hers now, a tomb of her lies. The road stretched ahead, empty. I wasn't David the Clueless anymore. I was free, a hardened, hollow, but free. Revenge wasn't sweet. It was a quiet, bitter peace. And that was enough.